What's up, Grassroots World? I'm Chris Logan.
I'm Ernie Barber.
And we are the Flagrant 2. Coach, what's happening, man?
Hey, not much, man. I'm excited to make our picks, 6A through 2A, get after it, and then watch a lot of basketball over the next week. So I'm excited and looking forward to see what happens.
Yeah, we're finally here, state tournament time. I mean, this is what all of the podcasts have been about so far, all the build-up. And,
this is the pinnacle of the year, man, so exciting.
We got high school going on, and then college will be going off. You got the conference tournament starting in a week, and then March Madness. So really, literally the best time of year for all hoop heads out there.
Yes.
And I know we've been excited, and it's getting going tomorrow at the Big House. 3A gets going tomorrow at 4:30, and then it's nonstop basketball for the next 4 or 5 days till we crown champions in every class. Some going for three-peats. You got two teams going for a three-peat. Class A and B are now over already because they started them early. So just kind of a different thing. Okarchi took home Class A, so congratulations to those guys.
Congratulations,
Yeah, so that's crazy to me. OK was such a favorite in that class, and a lot of people just thought that they were going to take it, but hey, as it goes, any given Sunday, it's any given day in basketball.
That's why you got to play the game.
Yeah, so congratulations to those guys, and it just so much stuff to talk about. I think that any surprises so far before we start making our picks, any surprises you have from 2A through 6A maybe, or
I think I would say this. I think there's a couple teams. I think in 6A you had six really solid teams, and I think you had two that could go either a number of directions.
Yeah,
and I think you had teams. I think Memorial was probably a surprise, and obviously Westmore is a surprise, but I'll say that District 2 was a lot more wide open. Last year you had the COAC as opposed to District 2.
Yep.
And so the COAC was a gauntlet as opposed to it's a little different now. So I think that there's some surprises there in 6A. I think for the most part there might have been a couple other games that teams that got in that were a little bit of surprising, but I think 6A probably had a couple of the bigger surprises, but other than that, I think it's.
I agree. I think Westmore is a team that I don't think some people would have had making it to state. So I think that right off the bat, that's a team that if when I'm looking at who made it to the Final Eight, they got a lot of great players. I just think that some people would have written them off, and I think that they just played really well and hit their stride down the stretch. And
it was matchups. I think the way that they matched up, especially against Moore, it was a difficult matchup for Moore.
Yeah.
I think, and it's one of those things, they're a transition team, and they like to shoot a lot of threes.
Yeah.
And if those things happen for them, they do well. But if they get into a matchup, what they've got in this first round, you got a grinder here. And it's going to be size, and there's a lot of things. Edmond North has a lot of different versatility in their game. It's going to be difficult.
Yeah, I just want to hit on a couple of the games that I attended in person real fast before we get too far into this. One of them was Westmore and Moore, and I thought kind of what Westmore did was they were able to play at a tempo where Moore wasn't able to utilize Ebenezer Berthe, and I think that he was such a huge part of what they were doing in their long win streak that, I don't even remember him getting very many minutes the other night in the game, because it was so up and down, and those guys caught fire from three. The Lopers, it kind of put that game almost out of reach. In the second quarter, third quarter, Moore made a little bit of a comeback towards the end, but it looked like it was really never in doubt, to be honest with you. So
they play an up and down style. It's not I wouldn't call it a real what I would call a disciplined game. They play more of a just go at it, and they run up and down. They like to get going and run.
Yeah.
Get steals, get out on open transition, get missed buckets, get out and go.
Yeah.
If you manage that for them and make them play half court basketball, it's a little bit different team.
Yeah, and that'll probably happen in this next thing. But another game that was at that same Shawnee site for your consolation area championship, Norman took on PC West, and that was a pretty good game. I mean, really, that one went all the way down to the wire. I thought I was really impressed with Norman's sophomore guys. They're youngsters.
The roles, they picked up their role
They
players.
really did. But Bo Billingsley was excellent in that game, and Montrell Combs-Pierce, I mean, was the spark that Norman needed. Without him, they would have lost that game.
Yeah.
He just seemed like every time West was making their run, and it looked like, man, they're gonna put this game away. Montrell Combs-Pierce would hit a big bucket, get an and one, and it would really just swing the momentum back in their side. B.J. Randall, the junior, was really good for them. Combs-Pierce did a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't even score. I think he maybe had 9 or 10 points, but he's filled the stats assist-wise. He was really good passing in that game. Did everything he needed, but those young guys really stepped up well. PC West had a couple guys, Jace Coleman, a sophomore that I think a lot of people will know next year, that made a big impact for them, and I was really impressed by him. And great game. Norman moves on. I know the other game I went to, you were at that one as well. That was at Piedmont, Crossings, Carl Albert. What's your take on that?
I think, when it really comes down to it, we've talked about this at length. When you get Cam and you get Phoenix playing the way they're capable of playing, they're hard to beat. If those guys just play, they rebound the basketball, play tough defense, and set up their teammates, and then if they're knocking down any shots on the perimeter, which is not the primary for them, but if they sprinkle that in, that's just cherries on the top. But if they do the other things really well, I don't know that there's anybody, because the way they're set up and the offense they run, and the guys get open shots, the guards get open looks. They're dishing the basketball and moving it around, and the two bigs are playing, their roles and doing them very well. They're going to be very hard to beat.
Yeah, I think that with them, and literally, I think it may have been, the first or second game of the season, me and you talked about on this podcast about that. Like, if those guys are putting in, 10 rebounds a night and 10 points. They don't have to get 20 and 20.
Double-double.
If they get a double-double or close to it for the both of them,
they're killing people.
Crossings is tough to play with. They really are. On the other side, I thought Quincy Hopkins played one of the better games I've seen from him all season. I thought he was dialed in. The mid-range, it seemed like every shot he took went in. I mean, he had a stretch there where he made quite a few of them in a row and kind of willed the team back. Strong, physical defender, always has been. Had an explosive dunk in there. I think he did some good things. I think they had a senior guard, Hutch Russell, who was a baseball kid, but really always seems to show up in big games. Hit a bunch of threes in that game. But like I said on Twitter or X, when Cal Furnish sees the ball go through the net a few times, you better better watch out. And that's exactly what happened. I think
he gets in rhythm. He's tough. I will say this too, and this is, Carl Albert has a great coach, a long history there, done a great job. One of the things that I would say about what I saw, and not because he played on a rogue program, but Ryan Reynolds needed to be on the floor shooting the basketball more than he's 6'6". And I'm not going to speak to defensively or anything else, but just I knew going into the game that they needed to hit more threes in order for them to have an opportunity. They didn't shoot the ball particularly well in the first half, got them down. And when you're behind and Cal's doing what Cal does, dictating the pace and they typically shoot the basketball a little bit better anyway. You needed a kid like Ryan Reynolds to be knocking down shots, and why he wasn't in the game during some of those periods, and I'm not sure why, but that would have been one different thing I would have done differently, is when you have a kid like him that can really knock down shots, and when he gets comfortable and can knock a few down, which I think if you have him in the game enough, I think he certainly can do. Did a lot for us during the spring and summer, so there's no reason why at that level, a competition, that he can't do it at this level. But I'm not the coach. I'm not there every day in practice. I don't see those things. But that was one thing that I saw during the game that I was a little bit puzzled by. But I think some of those other guys did knock down some shots from the perimeter late. I was sitting there talking to a friend of mine in the stands, and I said, "You watch, this is gonna tighten up." And this was probably about the 4-minute mark.
Yeah.
And about 3 minutes into the 3-minute mark on in, it tightened up and got real interesting. And then, of course, they were able to close it out. But
Well, yeah, and I was just going to say, I mean, honestly, you need those shooters for the spacing aspect because guys like Jaden Hopkins, that's what he excels at is getting downhill. He's an elite level athlete along with his brother. But I thought that's what did happen late in that fourth quarter is I thought Hutch Russell started hitting some threes. Some other guys started hitting threes.
Yep.
And then that opened up the lane for Jaden Hopkins to go to, and he got fouled a number of times. He might have took 8 free throws in the last like 2 or 3 minutes of that game. So, but in the first part of the game, there was nowhere for him to go. And so I think that going forward for them, it's that spacing to allow him and Quincy to continue to attack the basket because that's their strengths.
Yeah, and they started out in a 3-2 zone, and my thought process is on a 3-2 zone. Early on, you got one shooter. Ryan was in the game early in that game, but they didn't get him the basketball in that 3-2 zone. They were trying to dribble, penetrate, and get to the free throw line extended and knock down some shots, which Quincy did. He knocked down a few of those.
Yeah.
My thing is it's real easy to attack a zone and get open looks on the outside down by the baseline.
Yeah.
They didn't do that. They weren't really looking for it.
Yeah.
There were opportunities there, but they didn't see them. But I thought early on, and I told one of my buddies, I said early on, if Carl Albert can knock down some threes early on and get some confidence from the perimeter, it'll open up those driving lanes, and then they'll have options where because they'll be more worried about the shooter, and the guys can drive and penetrate, which will open up for Quincy and his brother. And that never really happened. He had some shots at the free throw line extended in that, but they didn't get that perimeter shooting going at all.
No.
In the first half, which I think was a requirement for them to win the game, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah, like all zone defenses, there's always weak spots that you have to attack, and whether it be in the corners, like you said, down by the baseline or wherever. But also, that's the players on the court have to identify that as well. So
it's all about the players because I'm not saying the coaching staff didn't tell them to do that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is the players didn't identify that, and I think that's where you've got to come in and you've got to be able to see if they're not doing that. You got to pull them in and make them aware. But the other guys got to know where to set up too.
And I think that then shows you the basketball IQ on the other side of the ball in a kid like Cal Furnish.
Oh yeah.
Where it seems that he knows where the open spot is before it's open. He reads the defense so good that it's like we always talked about on this podcast. He sees it 2-3 steps ahead, 2-3 plays ahead. Same with Dayton, and there's a lot of guys in Oklahoma that are really good league guards that can pick apart a defense with their basketball IQ, let alone their skills and all that stuff.
Crossing's coach does a fantastic job too. So kudos to him. It's hard to win basketball games at a high level.
Yeah,
and so we can always sit here and say those things, but I have coached and I have seen a 3-2 zone, and I do know exactly how I would attack it, and those were my opinions throughout the process. But I would say that it's still tough to win. Carl Albert gave a good effort at the end of the game. Kudos to them and their year.
Yeah,
they're a fantastic team. So we'll see what happens. But just talking about what we saw.
Yeah. Yep. And so those are the games we attended just this last weekend. I think we'll hop into 6A, give our picks, and we'll go all the way through because we're not going to do another show until after Saturday.
Yes.
So we'll go all the way down to the champion, and as we go, I'll give my preseason picks because we did give them, and if anybody wants to replay our episode of the preseason preview, you can hear those picks. My pick's not changing in 6A though.
No, mine either.
So you want to start off, and let's just go down the bracket. Edmond North versus Westmore.
Edmond North.
Any specific reason?
I've got them winning the gold ball. I think their versatility, they can play inside and out. They've got guys that can guard. They've got guys that can play, in the block, strong defense and offense.
Yeah.
They've got arguably one of the best players in the state in Dylan Warlick. You know, I mean, it's just he's a matchup problem, and the guy's going to be a man at the next level. He's going to dominate in this game too. I think if Edmond North slows the game down a little bit, forces Westmore to play more of a half-court offense, I think it could be over early.
It definitely has a chance of that. You know, with Westmore, they're very streaky, and if the three guards are on, you know, from the outside, it can definitely get interesting. I think Edmond North, it's also experience. I mean, even though we bring Keontae Tramble in. Keontae Tramble has played in 6A state championships in other schools. When he was in Moore as a sophomore, they played Edmond North. You know, so he's been in big games, and everybody else on that team that plays a significant role, other than maybe Van Buren, who's a move-in, the sophomore. They've all been in multiple state championship games.
This will be their third in some cases.
And not only that, but they've been in tight games. As last year, when you looked at the Choctaw game, it came down to pretty much the last possession. So they've kind of been and seen the ups and downs and not get rattled. And I just think it's too much. It's going to be too much Dylan Warlick, but Keontae Tramble has had as good of a season as anyone.
Agreed.
I think me and you have given him all the flowers that
Keontae Tremble's one of my favorite. I mean, that dude.
We've pushed him and shown you why we think he's one of the better players in the state and having a great senior season. But I think that some other guys on the team, for them to win it again, are going to have to step up and kind of elevate their game a little bit. And I think that they will do that when it comes starting Wednesday morning. By the way, 9 a.m. for some of those games is nuts to me.
So Edmond North Westmore's at 10:30.
Yeah, that's a 10:30 game. Our next game, Deer Creek Edmond Memorial, is 9 a.m.
This one's going to be interesting.
Yes, and I don't know if they decided, and I want to speak about the timing thing. I don't know if they decided that the girls have always gone first, so they were going to change it up.
Yeah.
But it seems to me like your biggest draw would be. It would be beneficial to have it in the evening.
Yeah, I would think so.
I would think, especially in your bigger schools. I would think 6A, 9 a.m., 10:30, 12, and 1:30. It's over by 3 o'clock. I mean, I guess they did that in a sense so that you could also maybe go down and catch some games at the state fair. But still, I would think that the crowd.
I would say that's the upside to it.
That's the upside.
That's the upside to it. You can, if you want to gorge yourself on high school basketball. I mean, you get some in the morning, you get some in the evening.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with that. But I will say this as a team, and if I'm as a coach, getting up and having to be ready to play by 9 o'clock in the morning. We've all done that. When we're traveling to Lincoln, Nebraska, or wherever.
Spring and summer that happens.
Yes.
Probably hasn't happened in high school games very often.
And that's the thing is that we always hated, we'd get those, every once in a while you'd get an 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock game and the boys just dreaded it. So, word to both of the coaching staffs, you better get your guys motivated and get them to bed early on Tuesday night so that way they can be ready to go by 9 o'clock.
I mean, anybody that's been around grassroots basketball long enough in the spring and summer has been around a Friday night game at 9 o'clock that ends at 10:30, and then they have an 8 o'clock game in the next morning, and the kids are half asleep. And it's the worst basketball.
We gotta wake up. Let's go. Let's go.
It's the worst basketball you've ever seen for the first half or so, and then finally everybody gets going. But this is with everything on the line, so that's no excuse. My only thing is I'm hoping that the crowds are good because this is if you're a direct family member, you're gonna probably be at this thing.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm just hoping that people are able to get away from their their daily life of work and all that to get over to this.
There's some people that take the week off because they just gorge themselves on basketball, which I mean, I don't have a problem with you. I love you actually. I'd fist bump you if I knew you were one of those people. But
if they would bring March Madness back down to downtown Oklahoma City, I used to do that when remember when they would have some regional games. And it seems like they haven't had that in a while.
I know,
it's nice to bring it back.
Maybe when we get the new facility or the new
we that's something that needs to definitely be discussed, and I'm sure that that's probably in the works. I think Oklahoma City does a good job of thinking forward.
We're on the way up in basketball. You've got the Trey Young Center coming in. The new basketball venue that's going to be built that was passed. So good things ahead. We got a really good team in the NBA, so good things ahead for basketball.
That always helps too.
Yes.
When your team is doing really well, that always brings in the
So who's
money.
your pick on this one?
I've got Edmond Memorial.
I do too.
And some might say that that's the underdog surprise. Maybe they would say that.
Yeah, I would say so. But
I want to say this. I think Coach Shane Coward has done his best coaching job, I think, since he's been at Edmond Memorial with this team.
I think so too. I'll get into why. Go ahead, why.
I just think because of personnel-wise, he's got a ton of football guys, dual sport kids who came late, into the season.
Yep.
So that doesn't always mesh well or turn out to have success that they've done. But I think that they've taken this team and guys like Draylon Nero coming over definitely helped, but also a football guy.
Yes.
Kieran Padula, a football guy.
That dude's basketball though. Yes, but he's a Padula.
Yeah. I mean, I get when they get on the court, the Padulas, they do what they do.
Yeah.
But what I'm talking about is the fact that they weren't there through the beginning of the year. They show up and they're ready to go. Now, I know he knows that system. And Draylon, I'm sure, had to learn some stuff on the fly. But then they're young guys, and Hudson Franz has had a excellent season. Now, with Deer Creek, we talked about them. They're the sometimes up and down, and when things are up,
they can beat anybody.
They can beat anybody. So let's just not act like that's not the case. But I think Edmond Memorial is playing with this chip on their shoulder because they don't think anybody thinks that they deserve to be there.
Yep.
And I think they're playing with a lot of confidence, and everybody knows me. Confidence and momentum is the biggest weapon, I think, in sports.
It rolls downhill.
And when it's on your side, it just feels like that basket is, the size of an ocean.
Yep.
And I think that right now they're playing so well. And not only that, but defensively, Edmond Memorial has got some Elijah Brown, Brady Hancock. They've got some versatility.
That's where I think I give them an edge. Is that the defensive side of the ball? I feel like they're more consistent defensively than Deer Creek. Deer Creek is more of they're up and down, and sometimes when they're up, they're like you said, they can beat anybody, and it wouldn't surprise me. Like they have this gear that not a lot of people have.
Yeah,
but Memorial is a lot more disciplined and more. I think they've got some pieces defensively that will help them, and that's really why I'm picking Edmond Memorial in this game.
Yeah, I look for big time game out of Draylon Nero down in the post. Although he may be an undersized post, he's one of the strongest kids that plays high school basketball in Oklahoma. So I look for him to have a big game. I'm very intrigued by the matchups at the lead guard spots with Hudson Franz, Clyde Davis Jr., Hudson Linsenmeyer. Deer Creek has some guys. If those guys are all on in that game, Deer Creek's going to win that game.
Yes.
But I'm banking that the Edmond Memorial defense and the style of play where they're very good at slowing down their opponent
and I think
putting it to a half court.
Yeah, it's great point is that when you get into games like this in the first round of state, sometimes guys are a little tentative first half. They're they're trying to feel out the game.
Yeah.
And to me that gives Edmond Memorial a leg up because the style of play is a slower style of play. It's more of a grinding style of play.
Yeah.
I think that benefits. I definitely see Edmond Memorial probably playing better in the first half.
Yeah.
It's going to depend on how Deer Creek reacts and responds the way Deer Creek can and does at times in the second half. That's all hinging on that. It could go either way, but I'm picking in Memorial because typically state games are a little tighter called. And it's just more defensive.
Yeah. Now, the only thing I would say about Deer Creek is they made it to state last year and got bounced in the first round by Owasso. So this is pretty much the same team.
Yes,
I mean, there's really no one different in it.
Correct.
So that could be something, too, is that they come in with that chip on their shoulder. They got a little bit of experience. Some of these guys on Edmond Memorial might have been a part of a team, not last year, but the year before. But maybe that's Kieran. There's not many of them that were.
Kieran's a leader, man.
Yeah,
I'll tell you this, and I'll say this about Kieran. If I'm taking a backcourt in 6A, I'm going to take Keontae Tramble and Kieran Padula is my second.
Well,
Those
you
are the
got
two
some toughness right there.
I love tough dudes.
Yeah, those are
man.
tough guys
tough,
right there.
smart guys that can play D and just play good basketball.
So that and we'll move advanced, but that sets up Edlum in the semifinals.
Yes.
So hey.
You never know, man.
There's a lot of talk sometimes. Edmond gets a bad rap in some ways, but I'll tell you one thing: they have good basketball.
Oh, 100%.
Their schools are out of state. They either get all 3 or 2 out of the 8 teams almost every year.
Was it 2 years ago that Edmond Memorial was favored to win and North beat them out, and then North took their first state title that year?
No, Santa Fe knocked out Memorial the year they were first place.
That's right. It was Santa Fe.
Santa Fe.
But Memorial, I thought, had the best team going into that tournament.
And they did. And I think Santa Fe, in a weird way, set up the dynasty of Edmond North.
Correct.
Because that Memorial team dominated that Edmond North team throughout the regular season.
That's right.
With JV Seat and Gabe Seat. And that team was really good. And Santa Fe knocked out the number 1 overall seed.
Yep.
And then that Edmond North ended up playing Booker T in the championship. But that spurred on Edmond North, and they've never looked back since then. So
that's what started
the
quote-unquote dynasty.
Yeah.
They had a little help.
Yes, they did. So crazy how that's all them Edmond teams tied into each other, but they consistently put out basketball in the city of Edmond, and some are calling it the Mecca of Oklahoma basketball. Don't shoot the messenger. Just look at do your research. Girls and boys.
A lot of kids go to those schools.
Yes. So next game, Norman Owasso, which I want to say this.
This is a tough matchup for Owasso if you're gonna have one in the first round.
Yes, and I want to say that I think that's the most must-see matchup in the entire first round because
you got
I
two
think
players that translate extremely well to the next level.
And that's exactly why. I think it's Jalen Montanati, 5-star, top 10 national kid, versus Treshawn Combs-Pierce, who we both think is a much higher level player.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to go JUCO. He's going to do great at Indy, but he's a Division I
100%.
prospect wing.
Yep.
And he's only getting better.
Yep.
So I think that right there is must-see TV.
100%
I'm
agree.
hoping that they're on each other for most of that game.
That'd be interesting.
I mean, it's almost they might have to be.
Yeah,
I mean, with the way that those two teams are built, it seems as if they will have to.
Who else are you going to put on them? I mean, it's a tough matchup for anyone else.
No, because Owasso has another big. See, if Jalen was the only guy, and not that he's a big by play, but he's a big in size.
Yep.
But with Jax Kerr out there, they've got to have Isaiah Amos probably guarding him.
Yep.
And so it's pretty much the way that I think that they will have to do it.
Yep.
They might put B.J. Randall and switch him over onto Jalen for a quicker, kind of a 6'3"-ish guy that can maybe get up under him.
Yep.
But that matchup is prime time to watch.
No, I totally agree with that. I'd say that Coach Cole will probably have some, changes up. He'll change some things up defensively and try to throw different looks at him and different things there. But it's going to be an interesting chess game that gets played there because you know what generally Owasso, and the player that they have, they're going to display him pretty heavily.
Yeah.
But what Norman does and how Norman does it, what I'm really interested to see, and one of the things I'm impressed by, I want to say this, by Treshawn this year, his game has matured. It's not just that he's gotten better in certain aspects of his game, but he's matured where he does. I know the last 2 years prior to this year, sometimes he would take his game to. He wouldn't be patient.
He was forcing stuff.
He's forcing things.
Yeah.
And this year, what I noticed this year is he's scoring better than he has in previous years, and he's patient.
But he doesn't have. But the thing about him is he doesn't have to score a lot for them to be successful.
Correct. But he picks and chooses, and he's better. He's more efficient. He plays within himself.
Yeah.
And I really like his game this year. It's taken another level.
I was just going to say I 100% agree because I there was a point in that game where he was posting up, had his back to the basket, and he threw like a no-look pocket pass off his hip to the Isaiah Amos, and it was a bounce pass. And I just looked at him, and I'm like, that's the evolution of his game, is that he's not just he used to be known as like a premier wing defender, and then it turned into like he's their number one offensive threat, and he got better and better from the perimeter. But when I start to see the playmaking and just the well-roundedness of his game, he's really molded himself into one hell of a basketball player. Great kid too. Always loved
good
talking
family.
with him. Yeah, good people. Shout out to the Combs Fierce family. They're great people. But I think that game comes down to it's not Trayshawn Combs Pierce or Jalen Montanati. I've got it.
Defense.
I've got it. Well, if defense is always going to come down to any game, but I think that what I see is the two sophomore point guards, Bo Billingsley and Bowden Williams.
That's a good point.
And I think that
two guys that deserve a lot of attention.
Exactly. But whatever one of them can get off and do the things that they do well, I think that's going to be a big key. And then the bench. Because we just talked about him a little bit ago, Montrell Combs Pierce, if he plays like he did the other night,
good luck.
Norman is going to be tough to beat.
Yeah.
Because the explosiveness that he does and his craftiness to get to the rim and finish, it just adds another element for Norman. And that was my thing coming into the season. I was concerned about their depth. That does not look to be the problem with them anymore this far into the season. So with that said, I've taken the Owasso Rams to win that game.
So I'm gonna go Norman on this, but you could go either way. I would say this, and one of the things I think is going to challenge Owasso, they've got to trust the other players to step up and make plays, and it can't be one guy.
Yeah.
If they do one guy, they're gonna jeopardize themselves on getting winning a gold ball.
No.
So I'm not saying they're going to do that. I'm saying that I think Norman does do that, and if I look at the way they played in their roles, I know they had a little hiccup here in the area tournament.
Both teams did.
Yep.
Owasso lost to Edmond Memorial,
correct.
and Norman lost to who was it that Norman took a loss to?
Norman took a loss. Who was that? They beat Westmore, then they lost in was it regionals or area?
They lost in the first area game. Deer Creek.
Deer Creek. Of course.
Which was a low-scoring game.
Yes.
It was like 39-38 or something like that.
And that's the thing. I've been saying it all year on this podcast. District 2 struggles to score the basketball at times. If Norman struggles to score the basketball, good luck. Because Owasso doesn't typically struggle to score the basketball.
Well, the one thing I know about the, 100-plus times I've watched Jalen Montanati is turn the lights up bright, make the moment big, and then you're going to see what it is that makes him so special.
Yeah, no,
so
I would agree with that.
That's the part that I take as an intangible and go, he is good enough to literally take over a game and put up 40 points.
Yep.
But I do think it's going to take guys, and this is a guy I think that will have a big game in that, and that's the senior Cody Lecklider. I think that he is going to have a good game against Norman. I think he's kind of a X factor for them. Gabe Patterson is as well. Obviously, Jax Kerr is going to have to be a force in the paint.
Yeah.
Isaiah Amos is about 6'6", but he's big and strong.
Yeah.
So if he can keep Jax,
their length is it's difficult.
It is. So that's what makes them versatile. But if Isaiah can keep Jax away from the basket, that will help. That will favor Norman immensely. I just think that Owasso. I think that they took that loss to Memorial, and it woke them up. And then even in the first half against Southmore, they looked a little bit like they were a little bit shell shocked. But then they
buckled down.
They buckled down and then turned it on in the second half.
I'll say this: I would normally pick Owasso. I think Owasso's a premier team. There's no doubt about it. But I'm going to do this to just say, hey, pick one. I'm going to go a different direction.
Yeah.
Norman's going to have to play an outstanding game to beat Owasso. So I'm just trying to motivate my Tigers.
Yeah.
And I like what Coach Cole's done all year long. I'm going to stick with Coach Cole.
One thing we love about this podcast is it can be used for two different things. But one thing is definitely used for is motivation, because we definitely hear from these guys.
Oh yeah.
If I pick against them, we're going to. I picked against Southmore the other night. They let me know about it when they won their game. I love it. I respect it.
I've gotten things through back channels of people saying, "Oh, he didn't pick,"
Yeah.
And I've heard stories about, they thought the program was dead and all that. I'm not saying any names in this. But look, it is what it is.
Yeah, well.
But I'll go ahead and pick Norman. I think they're going to have to play lights out, but I'll pick them. Owasso's a fantastic program.
Okay, so we hop down into the all 918 matchup, BA versus Tulsa Union.
That's going to be a good one. I'm going Union. I think Union is playing some of the best basketball in the state, most consistent, checks all the boxes, has all the roles filled out on their team, has really good players in each of those roles. Man, Union's going to be really tough to beat. I'm just going to say that.
Absolutely. I am also going to take Tulsa Union, but I am very interested in watching that game because I think Broken Arrow has kind of underperformed in the regular season to where people kind of wrote them off.
Yep, I agree.
But I don't think you can write them off because
they're in the tournament.
They're loaded with they got guys at every position.
On the squad. They've got a bunch of guys on that squad.
DJ Howell, 6'5" point guard. They've got some guys in Devon Wallace. They've got some guys that can really do some things. With that said, I don't think that they have the size and down in the post. And I think that Miles Flemings and Eric Madrid are going to be a load, especially if they can get it into a half-court game and slow it down. I think that that's what they're going to obviously try to do.
Yep.
But the thing about Union is they can play at a fast pace,
They can do either way.
Because
Corbin
Gunn and Dalen can go any way you want to play.
Yes.
So I like them. And like I said, like you
they're
just
versatile,
said,
man.
they've been playing as good as anybody in the state over the last couple of months. We were big on them, me and you, at the East-West Showdown prior to the season. We were like, wait a minute, this team is going blow for blow at Edmond North, and they each had their full team in there. So it's like that what was impressive about it. And though we call that a scrimmage, we saw what we saw, and we saw it was more about matchups and personnel of who they have to put up against them. So I'm going to take Union. So I have the all 918 and then the all Edmond in the semifinals.
Yep.
Let's hit it. Who do you got in Edlam? North of Memorial.
I'm going North. I just think they just overpower. That'll be because they know each other so well. That's going to be a really tough game. I will say, players, Jimmys and Joes beat X's and O's. And my thought process is that Edmond North has the Jimmys and Joes, not that Edmond Memorial does not. They've got really good players. We've talked about them. There's a bunch of players on that team I love, really good players. I'd take on any squad and go win basketball games. I just feel like Edmond North is – I think that loss to Moore woke them up. And the way that they lost to Moore, I think, woke them up. And I don't think they're going to allow that to happen again.
No, and I also think rebounding is my number one thing in that game. I think that North is going to crush them on the boards. I think that it's not only does Warlick get 13 boards, and Tramble's actually a great rebounding guard.
That's true.
But Bryce Potts, Xavier Ross, I mean, there's just so much size there.
You get extra possessions, you're going to win a game.
And that's what I'm looking at. Extra possessions, guys on the perimeter, and Dontrell Yearby, they need to knock down their threes. He will do that. Tramble is going to take this thing personal. He wants that ring as bad as anybody. So I think that I'm taking Edmond North. Not only did that they played Memorial maybe 2-3 weeks ago, and I think they won by like 30-something points. I mean, they just it's matchups. It's always matchups when you get to this point, and I like Edmond North in that matchup big time. So I got North moving on to the championship game. How about I have the 918 matchup.
I'm going to go Union. Either one.
You going Union?
I go Union.
Okay.
Union is. I mean, it's going to be hard to pick the final.
And here's the way I look at this. I think Union is playing as good as anyone in the state. And I like them against anybody except for against Owasso. And they did beat them once in a close game. But in the first game, Jalen had 9 3-pointers and destroyed them single-handedly. I think that, once again, bright lights, that's when superstars step up. I've got the Rams winning that game, and I think you're going to see a big game from Jalen. But he will have to have help. I will put this. He will have to have help from the guards. Because the bigs, Jax could be neutralized by Eric.
Because he's not going to have the ball in his hands all game.
By Eric and Miles. But I think that Jalen now, if Dalen Fuller can play some defense like he did in their last matchup, and he's definitely capable of that because we've talked about him all season long, that would be where I would jump onto the Union side. But I'm sticking with my preseason picks, which
you can go either way.
Which was North and Owasso.
Yeah.
And that's what I picked in the preseason. And in 6A, this might be the only one I stick with where it's that. But when we get to the championship game, I've got Edmond North winning that game. And I think that it's going to be Dylan Warlick. That's the answer I have for you. Dylan Warlick is what Dylan Warlick is, and he is a monster. He is a kid that plays harder than anybody in the state. The motor never shuts off. He's going to take it personal. It will be his last high school game ever. I just think, and with that said, I think Owasso is the favorite to win the next 2 6A championships after this year.
No doubt.
I have them. It's nothing is a foregone conclusion because after July 1st, we have no idea who's coming in and what's doing what. But I think Owasso's time is next year. I think they get one more step closer this year. They get to the championship. I'm going with the North Huskies, 3-peat champion. Dylan Warlick goes up on the Mount Rushmore of basketball, high school basketball in the state of Oklahoma if he wins his 3rd championship, which, by the way, has never been done in 6A. There's never been a 3-peat. So
which will make it very difficult.
That will make it difficult. History is not on their side when it comes to that. But then again, there not been many kids that dominated the game from their freshman year on quite like Dylan has.
I would just say to Edmond North, it's one game at a time, so focus on the first game. But I'm picking Edmond North as well. I have them playing Union. I think Union will match up with Owasso and be able to, and I think they're playing a little better basketball. I think they end up beating. It'll be a tight game. That game, they know each other so well, so that's going to be a chess match between coaches in preparation.
Yes.
And I think both of them have done a really good job. Owasso won the regular season by just a fraction because of the district
point
points.
differential.
But I think Union remembers that. I think Union comes back. I think Union is able to, because I think they're playing, slightly better basketball. It's marginal, but I think Union wins that in a really, really tight game. I think that's an epic matchup.
And I was just going to say that if the eye test is what you're going off of, Union has played better. They played better over the last couple of weeks, but I just can't get it out of my mind.
Jalen's going to rise.
That 3-pointer against Dale as it drains in, and people want to talk about his shooting percentage wasn't great in that game, but he had 40 points and hit a 3-pointer at the buzzer to win the game. In I think the biggest game in Oklahoma in the regular season, as far as just Oklahoma, I think that game was one of the biggest games in the state. No
doubt.
So
he made a name for himself. He solidified his who he is in that game.
So yes, everything will have to go their way. It's not a one-man team. The guards have to step up. Jax will have to do what he does, but I think it's just too much Edmond North. I think in that championship game, North will win, and I think that's our 6A.
My last thing, and I'll move from 6A, we'll get into 5A. I think Union put so much into that game to beat Owasso that they come in flat in the final championship game. And I know that sounds crazy. And then Edmond North wins that and wins a 3-peat. That's what my thoughts are.
So with our preseason picks, either way, it's still the same team that we picked.
Correct.
We both picked Edmond North. I just had them playing Owasso, and we'll see if that becomes the case.
Best of luck.
Let's move into 5A.
Yes.
Where in 5A, I am going to switch my preseason pick, and my preseason pick in 5A was Carl Albert. And they had some guys leave and some different things. And that's not to say that they won't win it, but I just think that if I had known that prior, I probably wouldn't. I would have made a different choice in preseason pick. But they have a great team, and they're going to put up a hell of a fight.
Yes.
So, but let's start out with the first game. Midwest City, Collinsville.
Midwest City. It's going to be a good game, but Midwest City's Midwest City.
I think that Midwest City has played so well. I just think that the guards are so dynamic. And I think like the other night in Guthrie when they go double overtime, they have 4 guys foul out. Carl Sean Young fouls out in the fourth quarter. And the growth of Deshaun Denson in those overtime periods where he knocked down 8 free throws in a row, and he's like he single-handedly put that team on his back as a sophomore.
Yep.
Denson is one, a kid that I'm very high on in the 26 class. I think he's just like we call him all the time, the assassin. I think he is. I think his attitude never changes. He's one of the better 3-point shooters in the state, regardless of class.
Yep.
I think Roy Henderson has had, arguably, we've talked about guys that have had the biggest come-ups of Tavares Deans at Lawton.
Yep.
Roy Henderson is in that mix.
Yep.
Every JUCO within 500 miles should be all over Roy Henderson, not just in
Totally
Region
agree.
2, but I know the Jayhawk Conference, maybe Cali and those teams are in on him, and I would take Roy Henderson on my team any day of the week. He is what I call a hooper. He just plays the game. It's fun to watch. He's explosive.
He's relentless.
So then you throw in Carl Shawn and his high major athleticism, size, defensive prowess to guard on the wing, but his ability to attack the rim, shot making, and then they got other guys. It's not just those guys. Mason McKenzie, Brian Williams, they're just so deep.
Yep.
Mark Jackson with the 3-pointers off the bench. I like Midwest City. Collinsville's had a hell of a season. Zach Brown, great player. Noah Warden has had a good year from them. Aiden Anderson, they got the junior. They got some guys on Collinsville, and they will be playing a different style of ball. But Midwest City saw that. Midwest City is a team that, other than Owasso, is the only other team that beat Union in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And Midwest City put a hurting on them, and that's because of the style of play. You got the big man, you can try to post us up. I talked about it on our live show the other day. It's the possessions and the turnovers and the pressure that Midwest City puts on a team like that.
I think if Midwest City comes out early in that game and is real disciplined early and kind of nullifies Collinsville, which I think they're more than capable of doing, then they're going to get out and play their game. Once they come out, they get a feel for the game, and then they're going to explode. I think that's going to be it's going to start out tight, but I think Midwest City pulls away pretty handsomely in that second half.
Yeah, I've got Midwest City winning that one. Let's hop into the next one. This
one's going to be a great
Thursday
matchup.
at 12 o'clock. Good matchup.
I'm going to get right at this. Okay, Carl Albert, watched them a couple of times this year. One of the things I think, and I mentioned this just a little bit ago, is that Carl Albert has to shoot well from the perimeter if they're going to win the state title, and they have to do it consistently in first and second half.
Yeah,
they're able to get paint points and the dribble penetration, and they've got those players.
Yeah,
they've got to get a couple guys knocking down threes in critical moments where they're looking for it, and they get those opportunities in the first half and second half. They can't be one or the other. They have to be able to shoot consistently from the perimeter. If they do that, they can beat Holland Hall. But Holland Hall, to me, could be a dark horse in this whole thing. I say dark horse. They've done it. They've had a great year.
Yeah,
but Teddy Owens has got a great group there, and I'm picking Holland Hall in this one.
I actually am too. I'm taking Holland Hall, and I think this is a great coaching matchup. Coach Price versus Teddy Owens, who I think is one of the best coaches in Oklahoma. I like the way Holland Hall is playing right now. I
got
really
their best player back too.
Really want, and I would pay to watch that matchup of the two sophomores in Julius Wilson versus Jaden Hopkins.
Yeah.
You're talking about two explosive, strong guards who are going to be two of the best players in Oklahoma for the next 2 years after
Could be
this.
D1 prospects in both of those guys.
Absolutely, both of them are Division I prospects. I think that Carter Benton. The thing that I like about Holland Hall is I think Ethan Tabor gives them some presence down low that Carl Albert is lacking now that Jaden Mott is gone. So I think that he'll do some things down there. I think they've got some good play from some of their role guys. Ryan Levine, the guard, small guard. He's done well for them. I think Carter Benton and Julius Wilson are going to be too much, and I think that Holland Hall, and I don't know if, it's not an upset necessarily, but though the fact that I had Carl Albert pick preseason,
me too.
That one was tough for me. I'm going to be honest with you. Picking that game was tough because I could see it go either way.
Both teams are really, and you mentioned off the get-go, both coaches are fantastic coaches.
Yes.
I think we need to start there. Kudos to both of those guys coaching these teams. They've got really good, talented players on both sides. When I look at well-roundedness, I think Holland Hall has an inside presence, and they can definitely shoot from the perimeter, and they've been consistent regularly. To me, that's where I think Carl Albert has struggled, is shooting from the perimeter consistently has been an issue. Now, they've got some guys that really did well in that second half, but they've got to put both halves together. And if I see that, then I could definitely see how Carl Albert could win the game. But right now, when I look at how that matches up, and I typically, when you come into a first game, the style of play matters, and I think it's going to favor Holland Hall, and that's why I've got Holland Hall in that game.
Yeah, I think that for Carl Albert, it will be if both Hopkins brothers can get off their offensive game.
That changes everything.
That changes everything, and that's possible. It is possible. Sure. But like I said, I look at these matchups, and I go, I think Quincy Hopkins is going to have another big game. I think that depending on the matchup, I'm not sure if Julius will guard Jaden Hopkins. So then who guards Quincy? So I think Quincy's going to do pretty well as far as how athletically and strong he is. I think he'll be able to get to the rim at will. But that matchup between Julius and Jaden Hopkins would be special.
That's one of the best first-round matchups in all of the tournament, I think. Yeah, that's in a top 3 matchup right there.
So I think that if Carter Benton knocks down shots from the perimeter, I think that to me is what's going to be, and I think he will. I think that's what's going to.
I do too.
I think since Julius has come back, it's been able to let him do what he needs to do. I think the spacing will be good. I just think that Teddy will have some type of game plan.
What's interesting about him? Carter Benton reminds me of kind of a Luka Doncic type of kid.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
He's not like overwhelmingly athletic,
yeah.
but he finds his spots. He can shoot from the perimeter. Yeah. He can finish at the rim. He does a lot of things well, but he's deceptive about how he does it.
And I was going to say, that's what I was going to say, is he is deceptive, is that he can put the ball on the deck, and he's got some moves, too. Like, he's not just a catch-and-shoot guy.
Yeah, he's talented. He's got some skill to him.
He's good at creating space to get his shot off. Correct. I think that's maybe one of the more undervalued things with him.
And that's what I talk about Luka Doncic. He creates space, and he's not like a super athletic where he creates space that way. He does it with nuance.
And it's also it's craftiness, and it's change of pace. It's knowing when to give the burst and when not, because that's what Luka does. And I think
a lot of young kids struggle with that. They're all one speed.
Hey. If I'm being compared to Luka Doncic, I'm having a good.
Heck yeah!
That's not bad. That's not a bad person to be compared to.
Exactly.
So, Holland Hall's who I've got. You got them as well.
Yep.
And it's hard for me. And let me tell you, that was hard because Carl Albert was my preseason, and I don't like changing my picks from the preseason. But there was also some.
Hey. Prove us wrong or right. I don't know how you want to look at that.
No. Use it however you want to use it. If it spurs you on to win, we'll take credit for it. And vice versa the other way.
Carl Albert's an outstanding program, a great team.
But in 5A, looking at Carl Albert losing a guy and Midwest City gaining a guy from when we did our preseason, that kind of changes some of the stuff that we're talking about right now. These roster moves, there was no way for anybody to foresee some of this stuff. And when we get down into 4A, the same thing. If you had known that prior, we would have made different picks. I mean, most of us would have anyway. So now let's jump into the rematch heard around the world.
Yeah, from last week to this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's their last game that they just played in area. So Booker T. Washington taking on Edison Prep. Edison Prep won that game in overtime. Mm-hmm. For everything we said on the last podcast of why Edison would win if Jeremiah Johnson.
And we both picked Edison Prep.
And they did great. But I'm going to flip it here. I'm taking the Booker T. I'm taking the Hornets. I just think that it's always hard to beat a team back-to-back. I would agree just played them.
I would agree with that. I just think that the one thing, I think Edison has the kryptonite for Booker T, and I'm going to go ahead and pick Edison. And I'm not going to lie, I think Jeremiah Johnson is an absolute stud.
Yeah.
I think they've got other guys on that team that are really that can flat out go as well.
Yeah.
I just think they're a tough matchup for Booker T. I will say this though, Booker T's got a fantastic coach, and he's going to make adjustments.
Yeah.
And so it's really going to be about adjustments adjustments with both coaching staffs and getting these guys ready to play.
Yeah.
I think Booker T struggled with some things that, athletically that Edison brings to the table.
Yeah.
It's going to be a nail biter again. I don't care how you could pick either
That's
one.
a great
Flip
game.
a coin. That's going to be in
That
the top
game should
three.
not be at 10:30 in the morning.
Correct.
That should be prime time.
That should be prime time. That's a top 3 game, first round in the state. Period. But I'm going to go Edison. I think it's going to be a nail biter again. But I think these teams match up really well with each other, and you could play them 100 times, and they're going to win 50 out of 50. It's just
I like Booker T in this one. I think that in the last game, B.J. Harris had a great game for Booker T.
Yep.
But I look
True.
for the X factors of Mason Matulis, the sophomore shooter. I look for him to have a big game in this one, and I'm looking for someone like Isaac Sanders, Jamari Simpson to step up. Now, one other thing I'm interested to see in that game, does the potential star, some people have him ranked number 1, some people have him ranked number 2 in the state as a freshman, Jock Mitchell.
Yeah.
Does
he step up?
Step up?
Yeah.
And this could be a game for him to really jump onto the scene. He's going to be playing for Mocan this summer. So if that tells you what level he's at,
talented.
He's got to be talented to play for Mocan. So I want to see him have a good game, because if he does, I think that could jump him up right away. But I've got Booker T. I think that you're just going to see a well-rounded game from all their guards in this. I think that if this was the first time they were playing, I probably would take Edison, but I'm going to go Booker T because I know how hard it is to win back-to-back games.
No, you're absolutely right. I don't
Adjustments
disagree.
are made, blah, blah.
I don't disagree with the word you said. I'm picking my guy, but I'm also looking at this and saying, hey, this is one of those games that could come down to the last possession. Whoever has the basketball last possession.
And I hope
wins.
it does.
Yep. And I think it will be very close.
Okay. And then we're back to another rematch as well from, what was it, a week and a half ago?
Yep.
Del City versus Crossings again. So I'll just tell you this. I'm going to take Crossings again, but it will need to be the same formula that won them the last game.
Yep.
And in that game, Phoenix had 17 and 22.
Yep.
He does not have to have 17 and 22, but he has to be a formidable big.
I think they'll rebound the basketball well, and they'll dominate Del City in the paint, is my feeling.
Yes.
But the guards will nullify. Cal will not have. I don't think Cal will have his typical game in this particular game, and I think Crossings win due to Cam and Phoenix doing what they do.
Yeah, that's just the one thing that Del City doesn't have is a ton of size, so it's going to be hard to match up for them defensively. But one thing I will say is if we're going to mention that Coach Coward at Memorial had one of his best coaching jobs, then Coach Lenny Hatchett at Del City in the same breath.
100%. Lenny Hatchett's a Hall of Fame high school coach.
Top coach, one of the top coaches. I think he's a top 2 or 3 coach in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I would say this. Lenny Hatchett leads the right way. I love what he puts on social media. Well, I'm gonna say this. I think Lenny Hatchett's definitely on that discussion.
Yeah.
Top 2 or 3.
Yeah.
I know who my number 1 is, but he's no longer at Kingfisher. Coach Reese is on the next level when you look at what he does and how he does it. But my point is, Lenny Hatchett's on that and Coach Hatchett is a legend, and Coach Hatchett this year has done a phenomenal job. And if you I listen to the stuff he puts on social media. I love what he's about and how he gets these guys to buy in and makes these guys students of the game. And the kind of character that Coach Hatchett has it's infallible. The man is amazing.
Well, and also, I mean, and it's not even mid-season, late season edition of Michael Graham Jr. is one of the bigger pickups in all of Oklahoma high school basketball.
True.
If we're talking about Nickens down at Douglas, I think that Michael Graham Jr. has made a huge impact immediately for them. But it's not as if Del City wasn't playing well before that. Kentrell Thurston, defensive lockdown senior that they had a great defensive season, can do some things.
Yeah, he's going to make it difficult for Cal.
No doubt. I think Jay-Sean McAllister and Deshaun McCarroll have had monster seasons for them. The senior Deshaun McCarroll has really been a player to me that's been under the radar throughout this, and he's done some really good things.
I'm happy for Del City after last year and losing the players that they had last year, and then losing Terry going to To Douglas. I mean,
Yes.
there's just been a lot of, and he just continues to generate, state qualifying teams.
Yes.
No matter what, you can't. No matter who you put on his team, he gets them to buy in. They play his way, and it's winning.
So that's
basketball.
why when people go, well, they got there because they added a player. Last year, he lost one of the top.
Correct.
5 players in the state, and they still won.
Correct.
Now, having Brandon Garrison was excellent, but he still lost one of the top players in the state, and they still won 5A state championships.
Correct.
So it's just that great coaches.
Yep.
It is Jimmy's and Joe's, but when you put good coaches, great coaches with good players and good teams, you get good things out of it.
It's called marginal gains.
Yeah, that's it.
Just the little stuff,
little stuff. So I've got Crossings advancing to play Booker T.
Me too, but it'll be tough.
So we're only difference you have is we each have one game different. You have Edison, I have Booker T. So Midwest City, Holland Hall. I've got Midwest City. I think that there's just too much firepower. I think that the only way you're beating Midwest City is if you can shut down 2 of the 3 guards.
Yep.
And no one has been able to do that yet.
Good luck.
No one has done that yet.
The game's dominated by guard play, and these guys all can dominate the game individually.
Yeah.
So, and then they've got role players that come in, and they could be big time players on a lot of other teams.
Yeah.
So it's just they throw a lot of fire at you.
Yeah.
And it's just tough to manage. So I agree with that. I think Holland Hall is going to have a fantastic game plan, and they're going to have to execute it to perfection in order to win that game.
Yeah. I think that where they're going to is, do they have enough defensively to slow down all those guards?
Yeah,
they can probably slow down 1, but like I said, you got to stop 2 of them. If you don't stop 2 of the 3, their guards at Midwest City can each score 30 points apiece.
Yep.
I mean, they've had games where they've almost done that.
Yep.
They've had multiple games where they've gotten 70-something points out of just those 3 alone. So it's, can you slow down 2 of them?
Yeah, it's going to be the challenge for Holland Hall is going to be where coming up with the game plan of how they're going to do that.
Yeah.
And if anybody can do it, I know Teddy Owens is capable of doing that. But I think that it's just going to be difficult. These guys are so talented.
And also, I mean, we got to talk about Midwest City. It's not just offense. Carl Sean Young is a high major defender on the wing position. Right now, you could take Carl Sean and put him in the college game today in the Big 12, and he could defend.
Yeah.
So when you have a kid with that elite athleticism and size in the high school game, you put him on their best player, and it is what it is, and you take your chances that maybe he's going to get in foul trouble, because that's what's happened to him a few times this season. But
it's a great point. I think the foul trouble, I think it's going to come down to, and I hate to talk about refereeing in context of what we're talking about, but style of play and calls early in the game always set the tone for how the game is played. And to me, the only way Midwest City gets beat by Holland Hall in this game is if somehow there's a style of play, and then somebody gets into foul trouble and it nullifies a player, and then now they only have to stop 1 guy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So in those situations, Holland Hall can certainly, is capable of it. But I think they're going to need some help, and I don't know where that comes from. But I picked Midwest City in that.
I got Midwest City moving on. Next game is, I think, will be one of the best matchups. Now you have Edison.
Yep.
I've got Booker T versus Crossings. So I'm going to take Crossings in that game.
Yeah, I'm going to too.
And you got him against Edison. I've got him against Booker T. I like the bigs in that matchup. I think that Cam Parker and Phoenix have got us. They got to step up. I mean,
you guys got to play big, man. You guys got to play big.
Especially
you guys play
in that
big.
matchup.
In that matchup, you play big. You're punching your ticket.
But I would pay good money to watch Cal Furnish go against the guards from Booker T because of the style of press that they play and the consistent pressure, for 94 feet. I would love to see that. I've got Crossings versus Midwest City in the championship.
Yeah, I think I do too. I'll say this. One of the things I would love to see Jeremiah Johnson matched up with Cal Furnish, because guess what, Cal? You're going to see this at the next level.
Yeah.
And I would love to be able to watch that, even though the thing is, I don't know that they'll match him up because they may put him elsewhere.
Yeah.
Because when you guard Cal, you got to put energy into that. And if you take away the energy there, you might not have as much on the offensive end.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure how Coach will do that for Edison.
I think that Cal in the summertime sees a lot of high major level guards and things, and still does some things.
I would say that, yes, but I'm going to say this. I watched a lot of EYBL basketball, and I'm going to say something that might be controversial. There's a lot of trash basketball in EYBL. There's a lot of talent, but there's a lot of trash basketball. Yeah. I'm going to tell you right now, Jeremiah Johnson defensively is one of the best defenders I have seen in the better part of 2 decades. I've watched a lot of basketball, played a lot of basketball.
I think anybody that's watched him figures it.
The kid is his instincts, his length, and the length that everybody has. Athleticism, there's plenty of that in EYBL. I think where separates him and makes him elite is his instincts. His instincts are as good as I've seen. I've watched a lot of basketball. I watched EYBL. I've watched SSB.
You've coached him. I think that know is better than a lot of people would.
He's fantastic. I'll just say this. Cal's a super player, but if you were to match him up with Cal and all things being equal, Cal would not be comfortable in that game. Yeah, I'm just telling you that he's special. And we talk about a lot of these big players and these teams, and Crossings Christian has been one of the biggest and most we've talked about all year long. Cal's been talked about at length many times, and he's an amazing player. He plays chess while a lot of kids play checkers. He shoots well. He sees the floor with just great vision. But when you get a guy like this that has the capabilities of Jeremiah is on that same level defensively as we see Cal.
I hear what you're saying. Yeah, no
That's
doubt
all
about
I'm saying.
it. I think that you're right on par with that too, saying that.
But crossings, I have crossings in Midwest City. And I'm going to say this. This is where we talked about this earlier in the year, and I think we picked Carl Albert. We picked them to play crossings, if my memory is correct.
Yes, we did.
And we picked Carl Albert.
Yes.
Right? My thought process is in this Crossings is they've played good basketball, but they haven't played great basketball coming into the state tournament. Mm-hmm. And, late in that game against Carl Albert, they struggled a little bit to close that out.
Yeah.
Right? I don't think you're going to have that luxury. If you're playing Midwest City in the championship game, I got Midwest City winning that game.
I have to go with the same pick. I've got Midwest City, and I've got Coach Torrey Noel winning a state championship in his first year as head coach.
Yeah, that's huge.
I think that's a massive, massive thing. But I also think that it's once again, you have to stop 2 of the 3, and no one has done it yet. Yep. I mean, no one. They haven't lost to an Oklahoma team this year in 5A, and not only that, but they've also beaten teams like Union Midwest City and handled them.
Yes.
Handled them. We're up by double digits. Yeah. It got close at the very end, but they were by almost 20 points at one point.
Plus, I think the other thing, too, and this is the part that I think is really, really critical, is that Midwest City, when they get I think they play with a chip on their shoulder. Mm-hmm. And when they get to the finals playing against Crossings, it's been favored all year long, been the number 1 team all year long, right?
Yes.
They're going to come in with a chip on their shoulder, and they're going to play that way. I would say to Crossings is that if the bigs play big and dominate, they're going to win any game they play.
Yeah,
any game they play.
No doubt.
Because Cal's going to play Cal's game. I will say this, the guards for Midwest City are going to make Cal miserable or try to make Cal miserable in that game. And he's not going to be as comfortable as he typically is in that game if it matches up that way. But Midwest City, to your point, I think athletically, I think they're just a load. And I think the other part of it is I think Midwest City likes to play fast. I think they can definitely play fast. And I think, Crossings better. The only way Crossings, I think, wins that game or stays in that game is if they hit a lot of threes. It's going to be a chess match, but I picked Midwest City just because, to my statement earlier, Jimmy's and Joe's are going to win over X's and O's.
And I just wanted to look, because looking at their schedule, I said that they haven't lost to a 5A team. They have 3 losses in the 6A. 2 of them were at the beginning of the season in the Edmond Open. They lost to Santa Fe, and they lost to Edmond Memorial. After that, there was a game that Roy Henderson missed at the Deer Creek tournament.
Yes.
He was out sick. They lost that game barely at the end.
Yep.
If not for that game, they would have won 23 games in a row.
Yep.
That's why I'm saying no one has been able to stop the three of them since they've started to click. And that's just where I don't see anyone being able to do that. I think that's just what it's going to come down to. I think the guards are too big, too dynamic. I think that they have guys to put on Cal, and I think Cal will get his shot off. And we're going to get into
a smart player.
And we're going to get into AAU
player.
because the EYBL, you talked about it, 17s in EYBL is a whole nother level. And I think if Cal Furnish does well in that, he's going to go Division I.
Oh, there's
I think that I just want to say that, but we're going to get into that more when we get into the AAU.
Yeah, I'll
stuff
say he's going to get he's going to have 4, 5, 6, 7 D1 opportunities.
He's one of my players because I did a list and I was on the phone with some basketball guys this morning. He's on my list of maybe 5 guys that I think can elevate themselves to the next level this summer and spring. I think that it's what he can do in the EYBL 17s literally can jump him up because if he does well in that's going. The 17s is literally a bunch of high-level Division I guards. I mean, that's what it is.
I think he can elevate himself to a mid-major level. I don't know that he gets Power 5, but who knows?
No. But mid-major, that would be good because right now he's currently holding D2 offers. So it's like I think he can get himself into the low mid-major category.
And I would say
it's all about fit.
Yeah, I would also say this. I would say, look, D1, go D1. You get your school paid for. You could get it at D2, but go D1 and put your name out there and try and see what happens, right?
Absolutely.
That's what I'd do. I mean,
Absolutely.
You get a D1 opportunity, go that direction. He'll get some good ones too.
Absolutely. So we've got Midwest City winning 5A over Crossings. 4A, let's get it going. Weatherford, Stillwell. I've got Weatherford.
Weatherford, yeah.
Weatherford, and Stillwell plays a fun style of basketball. We've talked about them before. They're notoriously known for upset specials. They're great at it. Tyrus Teehee, the senior, plays really well, kind of a hybrid forward guard, kind of plays a little bit everywhere. I really like him. Braden George. They've got some guys on Stillwell. That team plays really – they're a fun team to watch, but – I think Weatherford is too much for them. I think C.J. Nixon, the Sage brothers, they're going to have a field day. I just think that they're going to kill that.
One of the things I'm going to say, too, about Weatherford, Nate Rehrman, last year he was a big piece of why they got to the state championship game, and I think he's going to do the same thing this year. He's kind of like their glue guy, does everything.
Yes.
He's a guy that I think is going to have an outstanding state tournament as well. So Weatherford wins big, I think, in this particular game.
I agree. We got Weatherford moving on. The next game, I think, is an interesting game. Tulsa McLean, who's had one of the kind of the story of 4A that maybe not a lot of people would have had. Tulsa McLean. They played really well down the stretch and deservingly so. So them and Anadarko, great matchup. I've got Tulsa McLean.
I'm going McLean.
And I don't know if that's an upset because I think those two teams are pretty even matched. I think Trenton Walker for Anadarko, Jordan Kangi is a great defender. I like that Anadarko team, but McLean with Trey Crossland and KJ Nichols, they're gritty. Gritty is the word. We got Guthrie, that was in 5A, that was like that. I think that McLean is like that, but I think that McLean has some scorers that are a little bit more dynamic than even what Guthrie has. I've got Tulsa McLean moving on to play Weatherford.
Totally could agree with everything you just said there. McLean's been playing great basketball, and Weatherford, in my opinion, if it plays out the way they're going to have to play well to beat McLean in that second round.
Absolutely. And then in the next game, NRC North Rock Creek taking on Perkins Tryon. I've got the upset special. I've got Perkins Tryon, who we talked about.
I do too.
We were on. People in Perkins, okay, they got to follow the podcast. They know we've been on Perkins. We said that they would go deep into this with the team camaraderie, the team that has played together since they were all little. Quincy Mouton, the defensive, athleticism. Tucker Shepard, shooting. Tucker Shepard does it all. Dylan Davidson has been outstanding. I talked about him in the 2A through 4A pod we did two pods ago. I love them in that matchup. And NRC has had an exceptional 2-year run,
yeah.
And I think Devin Haney, he's going to do some things from the perimeter.
Oh yeah.
The athleticism of Caleb Hawkins, who is a player that I love, athletically, 2-sport kid, just does everything really well. Jordan McCain. They got guys, man. They got athletes.
Yeah, North Rock Creek's a hard one to pick against, but I'm going with the same pick that you.
Yeah, I think that could be a high-scoring game.
It will.
Between
I think
the two
so
of them.
too. I think it'll be an exciting game.
I think that'll be a fun one to watch. I got the upset special. Perkins, try on. Moving on. Last game in that, Douglas Trojans versus Blanchard. Who you got?
I talked to the Blanchard coach a few weeks ago while I was down in Plainview, and I told him that Douglas has some dynamic guards that are going to give even Weatherford the game of their life, and he's going to see it in the first round. Douglas is going to win big in the first round.
I mean, I'm taking Douglas. And we'll get into their guys in a minute, but I do want to shout out some of the Blanchard guys. I think Ross Johnston, the 6'6" forward, is a double machine.
Yep.
I do think that he's going to have some success in that matchup. Yeah. I think in the perimeter, down in the post, he's going to do some things.
Yep.
He's a kid that's 20 points, 16 rebound type guy. I wouldn't be surprised if he has that kind of game. They've got the senior Jared Wrigley, who's been doing well for them, shooter. And then they've got 3 sophomores, Emery Smalley, Jackson Hull, and Cole Watkins. I do like those guys. I like that team. But Douglas is on another level.
I'm telling you, you're absolutely right. There's levels to this, and I think when Blanchard gets on the floor with Douglas, they're going to realize that these kids are bigger, stronger, faster, with the exception of the big. It's going to be, he'll get his numbers, but those in my mind will be empty numbers, because this style of matchup is going to be up and down, and these guys are going to play. They're going to put on a show.
Yeah, no,
Douglas is going to.
Douglas is not playing in close games right now. They are locked in.
They are locked in, and they're playing for one purpose.
Yeah.
And the Blanchard boys, the difference in this is, I feel like, and I may get some flack for this, the Blanchard boys are playing in the state tournament.
Yeah.
The Douglas team is playing to win the state tournament. Their expectations are to win it. I don't think, if you were to be honest, who's picking Blanchard to win the state tournament? Probably not a whole lot of people, other than maybe the parents and the kids that are on that team.
No, they've had a good season. They're great. Yeah. They're a good team. It's matchups.
Correct.
If they were matched up in one of those other brackets, I'd probably up above. I might pick them to go on to the next game.
Me too.
But I'm not picking. Not against Douglas.
Douglas, unless Weatherford's playing Douglas in the first round, does anyone have a chance of beating Douglas, in my opinion?
So then we go to the semifinals, Friday, 4:30, Weatherford McLean. I've got Weatherford winning, but I do think McLean is going to cause problems for them. I do think there's some things that are going to happen in that game that I see Weatherford pulling away in the second half, but I see it as a surprise in the first half, where they're like, who is this team?
Yeah, where
did this McLean team come from?
Yep.
I think McLean might punch them in the mouth, but I think Weatherford, as it gets later in the game, is going to pull away and end up winning by double digits. But I've got Weatherford taking that game against McLean.
Yep.
Perkins Douglas. I'm going with Douglas over Perkins.
Could give him a run, though.
It will be probably the closest game Douglas has played since the dynamic prep game, 3 weeks ago or so. So
I love Perkins Triton. I think they've got a lot of pieces. I like the way they're playing too. I think that's the other piece of it.
With that said, I still got Douglas by double digits.
Yeah, I think game. I think at the end of the day, like you say, there's levels to this, and Douglas and Weatherford, I think, are just on different levels.
So here we come to, I think the best game that could be in the entire thing.
Correct.
Entire playoffs.
It's a matchup from last year's state title game.
These are the two teams we picked preseason to play. The difference when we picked them was what?
Well, they didn't have a superstar on Douglas.
They added, in my opinion, a top 2 kid. If you want to say top 3 in a 25 class, they added him in late in the season, and since he's gotten there, Douglas has looked like the best team in the state, regardless of class. If there was a tournament of champions, I would give you guys interesting picks on if we put all of the top. I don't know that anybody is matching up with Douglas right now. I mean, I would sure love to see them go against let's say the 6A champ or the 5A champ.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you right now, no one wants a part of Douglas right now.
I agree with that.
I think that Landry Ballard, Devon Scott, Jones, Jaden Nickens, James Green Howard, Jaden Williams, Deshaun Snoop Ransom, Corey Holman.
Yeah.
Like, I just think Monty House, freshman. I mean, like, they're so deep that some of those guys won't even get in the game, and those guys would be starters at any other school
and be one of the best players.
James
on the other
Green
schools.
Howard was the X factor. And I posted a clip from Douglas Weatherford last year.
Mm-hmm.
He was the X factor in that championship game, and people don't even really talk about him.
Depth for Weatherford is not there to compete with Douglas. That's the one thing that I think is challenging for Weatherford. I think if you just took the starting five, I think Weatherford certainly doesn't have the guard play. Because my guys, the Sage twins, they're guards.
Yes,
they will be guards at the next level. They can be wing guards at the next level. But I don't look at them as guards. I'm talking, when I say guard, I'm talking like a 6'1", ball handling, can shoot the basketball. That's where Douglas is a lot more dynamic at that position, and that controls a lot of the tempo of the game these days.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. CJ can bring the ball up. Tate both of them can bring the ball up and manage the game.
Yeah,
but they're not. That's not their true position. And when you get them in their true position, do they impact the game so much more? I just think that Douglas is more dynamic in that game.
I just want to say, I mean, we picked these two teams. I picked Weatherford preseason. We did not know Jaden Nickens would be on Douglas, or there might have been a different pick.
Correct.
But with that said, it's not a slight on Weatherford. They are a hell of a team. They are great. They play great. They have great size. I will say this.
I think Weatherford's a top 3 team in the state, regardless of class.
I don't disagree. But what I will say is, like, they do make CJ bring the ball up the floor. The thing about it is, the guards and the personnel that Douglas has, they will harass him.
Oh, yeah.
He will be worn down if they have to do that all game.
Yeah,
if he has to bring the
you're taking
ball,
risks there.
I wouldn't want that from CJ.
No.
Somebody else has got to do the primary ball handling.
And that's where I think Weatherford has struggled a little bit, is that particular portion of it. Now, I will say that my Sage boys can do that job, but then you're taking them out of a role that I think could be even more impactful. It's all going to come down to guard play for Weatherford and how they game plan for that.
Yeah.
Because if they don't game plan appropriately against Douglas, the game could be over early.
But the matchup that I've been talking about for how long now, that I would pay whatever amount of money, C.J. Nixon.
I will be at that game.
C.J. Nixon versus Jaden Nickens is must see for anybody in the state.
I'll be at that game.
And that game is at 5 o'clock on Saturday.
Yep.
And the 6A championship's at 7. I don't know what I'm going to have to. I'm going to have to.
You're driving from one to the other.
I'm going to have to hope I can make it to the 6. I may be late to the 6A, but I have to. If that matchup happens, and it should for all intents and purposes, that to me is the best game.
Yep.
That probably is the best game.
I went to it last year. I'll go to it this year, and I'm rooting. And I will say this: I'm rooting for my guys on Weatherford, but I'm not picking them, because if I'm putting money on it, I'm picking Douglas.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just too dynamic.
That's what we're doing here. We're trying to give you the best picks that we can. Hey,
and it pains me to say,
if that's
going against my
motivation
guys
towards Weatherford and they use it in that,
exactly,
then do what you do.
Yeah, Sage boys,
because it's not like,
take that as motivation. Your spring and summer coach is saying they're going to beat you. So look me in the eyes and see what you got to say about it. Let's hear it.
All right, so we move on. Let's move on to 3A, which starts tomorrow.
OCS.
Tomorrow, OCS versus Kellyville. Kellyville's had a hell of a season.
Yes.
Lofton Roach has been great for them. He's a shooter. He's had a great season for them. But Oklahoma Christian, for many reasons.
Yeah.
One being Luke Gray. 2 being Carson Jones. 3 being
the makeup of that team. We had the coach on our spaces last week. Coach Weaver on last week, and I would say this too, and I said it during the podcast, and then we even talked about it on Spaces. What I love about that team is you just mentioned all the positives, but when they have guys come off the bench, those guys step up and make big plays too. And that's the one thing about OCS, of all the teams that play in the state of Oklahoma, is it's not just the starting five and the big name players. Those other players come in and make huge impacts, and the bench is the best bench in the state. Don't bar none. That bench, they've got chance that they do. They are behind their guys.
Love that too. By the way,
that is an environment. That is an environment like I got chills up and down my back right now. Literally, seriously, if I had guys backing me like that, I could feel like I could run through brick walls. I love that, and I think what he's got there is special. So shout out to Coach Weaver. OCS, I think OCS wins big against Kellyville.
So we move on to the next game, Metro Christian versus Cassia Hall. Who you got?
This is a top 5 matchup for me. I'm going to go with Metro Christian.
And this is their third matchup of the season. Cassia Hall winning both, but close.
I'm going Metro Christian on this one. I just am.
Metro, they played on February 9th, and Cassia Hall won 62-59.
Yep.
And then they played earlier on in the season, and Cassia Hall won 68-60. I'm taking the opposite. I'm taking Cassia Hall in this game.
Yeah.
And this is a stylistic matchup.
Yes.
This is the size of Metro
yep.
versus the guard-oriented team and the youth of Cassia Hall.
Yep.
Jason Kim is a great player, the junior. But what a lot of people, when they associate Cassia Hall now, they think of the 2 freshmen in the backcourt,
Yep.
Memphis Duffy and Dallas Lowe. But what I like about Cassia Hall is the 2 twins, the seniors. They're both not big in stature, but they're both dual sport guys. Drake and Daniel Jarrett. They always seem to step up and make winning plays. Whenever I watch them in person,
that's a really good matchup.
And I just feel like they're going to bring an edge, and I expect the state of Oklahoma to see these 2 freshmen kind of put their name into the limelight. But I also think Jason Kim is going to have a big game in that game.
He's a special player.
I think that he's another heady kid. I like Cassia Hall on that. I really do.
Yeah, you could go either way. I had a feeling you'd probably pick Cassia Hall on that. My whole thought process is when you get into state playoff basketball, unless you have the level of dynamic guards like Midwest City or Douglas has, I always tend to favor bigger teams because I feel like when it comes down to the calls and things of that nature, I think this is going to be one of those games that comes down to style of play.
Yeah.
And I just feel like Metro Christian has been in this situation so many times for all these guys that I just see them stepping up. I think this is a game that it's within 4 to 5 points.
Yeah.
And I just have a feeling, I don't disagree with one word you said. I just feel like there's some calls that are going to happen, some style of play. The tempo of the game is going to favor Metro Christian.
Yeah.
And when you have a slower style of game, I like the size and what you're going to get. And I also look at the experience of Metro Christian. I just feel like they're going to come out ahead in a very tight game.
I think that what you're going to get from Troy Moses down low, the 6'9", and Jackson Sowards, the 6'6" wing, I think that they're going to present some mismatches to Cassia Hall.
Yeah.
I want to see if Wyatt Powell, who just committed to Missouri Southern in the D2 ranks, if Wyatt Powell has a Wyatt Powell type game, Metro Christian could win that game by a lot.
Yeah.
But I just think that Cassia Hall is almost playing with house money. They're so young, they don't even know.
Yeah, that's
they
a good
don't
point.
even know what they're into. And I think that they're going to be playing with some freedom, some confidence, and and the fact, and this is why they're going to go, we've beaten these guys twice.
Yeah.
We can handle it. We can take this team.
No,
and
you're
I
right.
look for the youngsters to step up, and I got Cassia Hall.
There's confidence there, and you're right. You said it earlier in the podcast. You're heading downhill.
Yeah, and obviously I took Idabel against Cassia Hall in the last round, which was a great pick. And shout out to the folks down in Idabel because, hey, they're riding high with the flagrant.
We're getting ready to pick this next one, too.
That next game is, I think, the best game in the first round of 3A.
I would disagree
Idabel
with
versus Victory Christian.
Yeah.
Who you got?
Idabel.
Ooh.
Yep. Idabel, I'm going to tell you right now, Idabel's playing outstanding basketball, and Idabel.
It's a stylistic matchup as well.
Yes.
If you tell me Chris Mason is going to post up 20 times in that game, I would probably take victory. I don't know what they're gonna run, but I am also taking Idabel in that, and some would say that's an upset. I don't think it is, as far as the way Idabel has been playing right now.
I think Idabel has played outstanding basketball. Nothing against Victor Christian. You're absolutely correct. I mean, they've got some stud players on their team. I just feel like, as far as what the coach has done at Idabel and those players have done all season long, I think is going to carry over. And like we said earlier, with confidence regarding Cassia Hall and Metro Christian beating them twice, I think Idabel's playing with outstanding confidence. As long as they come out and play the way they've been playing, I see them winning the game. If they tighten up and they stop playing the way they've been playing, well, then you could see Victor Christian easily winning the game. But I've got Idabel playing as long as they play the way they've been playing.
I think that JP Sumo has been flying under the radar all season, and this is his time as a senior. And I think every junior college in Oklahoma should be in on JP Sumo, the point guard. I think he could probably even get into some D2 stuff, but I think that he is such a dynamic scorer. He's in range the second he crosses half court. Yeah. He's quick, shifty. I like everything about him. They got junior Shane Threadgill. I've talked about both those guys on prior, episodes. They've just played so well down the stretch that it's hard for me to not pick them right now. With that said, I think Chris Mason is going to have a monster game in that, because I don't really think Idabel has a matchup for him. Yep. So my thing is it Mikey Doctor? Is it Gene Mason? Who will step up for victory to go alongside of Chris Mason? Because I just think that the guards, Cordavius Hankins for Idabel, they got so many guards that are playing so well right now together, and that town is bought in. They're locked in. I'm hoping the whole town of Idabel makes that 3-4 hour journey up here, and I'm sure they will, because that's going to be a great matchup. So I've got Idabel moving on in that game.
Fun game.
Idabel moving on. So the last one in there, 4:30, the first game of the tournament tomorrow. Mount St. Mary, who's been a hell of a story, versus the Millwood Falcons, the fully healthy Millwood Falcons. Yes, and that matters.
Mount St. Mary's coaching staff, shout out to them. They've done a fantastic job this year.
Yeah, Andre Dawkins from Duke, the Duke point guard that's coaching them, has done a heck of a job.
They've done a fantastic job. Shout out to them. I mean, and the players too. They've done a really good job. Obviously, in the tournament, they're playing the one team right now that I wouldn't want to play in Class 3A, because they're back and healthy, like you say. Yep. I think the one question mark I'd have for Millwood is, they're back and healthy, but continuity and working that out, I think, is critical. Talked about Douglas earlier with bringing in a new player, but they brought him in weeks ago, and they're already flying high already. I mean, they were flying high right out the gate, which a lot of people, you got to kind of figure out, where do you, kind of get that continuity and get people in their roles and whatnot. They just came right in and was just like, let's roll. I think you're probably going to get the same thing with Millwood, because these guys have played together for a long time.
And they've blasted people since they've been blasting people the last few games.
Yeah, so I see Millwood probably winning by double digits.
I will say that I'm very intrigued by the matchup at the point guard position of Mount St. Mary's Eli Jones, who, like Isaiah Wilkes for Millwood, they're smaller, but they're quick they're two of the quicker guards in the state.
They set the table for their players.
Yeah, and they're two of the quickest guards in the state, so them going head-to-head should be a fun matchup. Yep. I do think Jody Shavers, the 6'7" big for Mount St. Mary's, presents some mismatch stuff. But I just don't think there's enough firepower there to keep up with the Chris Clays and the Zon Williams.
And Zon Williams has had a fantastic year.
And how about Chance Bubba Davis, who we talked about last? The ice water might run the most in that kid's veins of anybody in the state.
Pass me the ball and we'll make the shot. Hey, and what does he do? He makes the shot.
Ricky, give me the ball.
I said that,
Ricky, I'm going to make it.
I said that went viral on one of the previous podcasts. It had over almost 800,000 views on that, or likes on that particular particular.
Oh yeah, no, it's in the
unbelievable.
millions as far as views.
Oh, it's crazy.
But anyways, I got Millwood winning
I
that.
do too.
So we hop up OCS, Cassia Hall. OCS is going to take that.
Oh, yeah.
OCS, too much experience.
Yep.
Cassia Hall has no matchup for Luke Gray.
Yeah.
That could be a Luke Gray 30-20 type game.
Correct. Luke Gray is, and I've talked about this with a number of people, and I'm sure they'll be listening to the podcast. Luke Gray's having a Trey Young, Blake Griffin type of run that you don't see very often, and he's playing next level basketball. He's playing. It's almost like he's playing with kids, and I don't mean that disparagingly against any of the guys that he competes against, but this guy is a grown man and playing big time basketball, and anybody that has to guard him, good luck. He's playing as good a basketball as we've seen in a long time.
No, absolutely. I think that OCS is going to win that game. And by the way, that game is one of the few games that will be played at UConn High School for the semifinals.
Hey, and by the way, UConn High School, because I watched it last year when Kingfisher played Douglas, that environment right on the court, that's a great environment. So those, the schools show up for that because it'll make a huge difference for your team.
And that's the same thing as the state. As the fairgrounds. The environment is usually better than the LNC.
Yes,
the LNC is just too big, and especially with 9 a.m. games, it's really going to be quiet in there.
UConn puts an environment together the way that place is built that is great for basketball. So show up and show out.
So we've got OCS beating Cassia Hall, moving on to the championship. Ida Bell Millwood. I'm going with Millwood.
I'm going with Millwood too.
And I think that will be a fantastic game.
Yeah, it'll be fun game.
I think you're talking about a bunch of guards that play similar styles going at each other and locking up.
Yep.
But I think in the end, Millwood has just a few more guys.
Yeah.
They're a little deeper, and I think by that time, everything will be clicking for Millwood. They'll see the light at the end of the tunnel that the championship is coming, or to the championship game. So I've got Millwood moving on. Finals in 3A, State Fairgrounds, Saturday, 11:45. OCS versus Millwood. Who you got?
I'm going OCS, man. OCS is Luke Gray, and then don't get me started on who else they have. But Luke Gray is, like I said, Luke Gray has been playing basketball on a completely different plane. You got to stop him if you have a chance of winning. They check a lot of boxes at OCS, and we talked about them just a few minutes ago. OCS is just too much.
Okay, so OCS versus Millwood. I've got Millwood three-peating in 3A and taking it home in Coach Dorian Williams' first year as head coach.
Could certainly happen.
I think that what you're going to see is, yes, Luke is the mismatch for them, but I think that Zon Williams, Isaiah Wilkes, Amari Barrett, Chris Clay, Chance Bubba Davis. I think the depth and the guards, now they're going to have to play a perfect game.
They have to shoot the ball well, I think. I think that's the one thing they're going to have to do really well.
They will. My thing in that game is, can they get Luke into foul trouble? Correct. Because Isaiah and some of those guys are great and they're relentless at attacking the basket. True. So go at the big and try to draw some fouls on him, because that would be the thing. Yep. If they could get Luke into foul trouble, I would heavily favor Millwood at that point.
I would agree with that. If I'm Millwood in this particular game, I try to pinch down, I double team, get the ball out of his hands. Make him uncomfortable, and they definitely have the ability to do that. And they've played against really good players, very similar to Luke Gray before, so they're not scared of that. I think they've got that, and I think Dorian will have them prepared. But Coach Weaver will have his guys prepared too. I think Carson Jones is going to be a big. He'll have a big game. I think OCS can shoot from the perimeter well enough, and I think Luke's going to have to trust his teammates. Yeah. If Luke trusts his teammates early and gets those guys going, Luke's going to get his in the second half. Yeah, that's how I look at this. I think it's going to be a really, really, really tight game, and I could even see Millwood having a slim lead in the first half. But I think in the second half, you're going to get a dose of Luke Gray, and Luke Gray's going to become the man.
I think we had Coach Dorian Williams on our live show, and I think what he said is what is defense. It's defense,
Correct.
defense, defense. And no one, when Millwood is healthy, that I've seen this season plays a full 32-minute game. I mean, it's
Defense.
swarming.
Yeah.
And now, and if you had told me Isaiah Wilkes, this was last week and he wasn't back, I'm not even going to have them pass the second game. But the fact that he's back and he looks to be completely healthy, I think that the defensive pressure that they're going to put on the guards
That's difficult for anyone.
It's going to be difficult. The pressure's going to be difficult.
Yep.
If Kyler Brown and Carson Jones can handle that well, that's another story.
Yep.
But if they can ratchet it up and basically say, hey, Luke, you have to beat us by yourself. You're going to have to single-handedly beat us.
Style of play is going to be huge in that game.
That's why that one's hard. But I'm also going with Millwood because it was my preseason pick.
Yes,
and
true.
I'm sticking with that pick.
Yep.
So that's 3A. We go to 2A, which,
This one we're going to roll through pretty quickly. I think.
We will, and we'll go. Dale Warner. Dale. I mean, we don't even need to go through that reason for why. Hennessy Merritt. I got Hennessy moving
Hennessy
on as well. I think that they have a good matchup. I think that it's going to be. That one could be a coin flip. It's just I'm going to get Hennessy.
It's a tough
moving
game.
on.
That's a tough game.
It's a tough one to pick.
But
I'm
going
with
with
them
Hennessy.
on. Preston Hooker. I've got Preston, and I do like Hooker with Hidalgo, the big. I really like him down there. But Preston has a lot of experience. They were in the state championship last year. We talked about them numerous times with Jervis Gorey and Giorgio Dunn Spencer.
Yep.
They're dynamic guards. They're both guards that are over 1,000 points.
I'm picking Preston as well.
I've got Preston winning that game.
They are, in terms of experience.
Hooker's playing well, though.
Yeah, Hooker is
and
playing well.
I do like
both
that
teams
team.
are staples in the state tournament.
Yeah.
I mean, recently they've both been in the state tournament quite a bit. I go with Preston too. When you look at being close games,
yes,
I think Preston just has a little bit more in the gas tank, and so I'm going with Preston.
I think that's probably a safe bet.
And guards generally today, and we've talked about this. We talked about it last week on Spaces, and one of the coaches said, "Hey, if I'm going with the guard play dominates the game these days because they have the ball in their hand, they can impact the game." I just give that.
And I love Nate Hidalgo, the junior
absolutely.
for Hooker. I think that he had an older brother that came through there that was really good. I think that he's going to have a big game. It would take a perfect game from them to beat. I'm telling you, Preston is good.
Agreed.
Next game, I think, is the best game in the first round in 2A. Hobart and Pecola.
Yep.
Hobart, Justice Johnson is a name that he's a senior that everybody should know. Has a 50-point game this season. Dynamic guard. His brother, Rampage, shout out Rampage, plays for SWASU. Having a great season in his senior season for SWASU. But younger brother can play. And I think every JUCO in Oklahoma should take a look at Justice Johnson of Hobart. He's a certified stud.
Yep.
I like Hobart. They've played really well. Pecola, we've talked about them all season long because we think that they are the team that can present the best matchup for Dale. And Dakota Terrell, Garrett Scott.
That'll be a single digit game, but I've got Pecola in that game. They've just got too much firepower.
So we've got Pecola, Preston, Dale, Hennessy. I've got Dale beating Hennessy. I've got Dale winning the first two games by 25.
Well, it depends on how long
points.
Coach Edmondson has his horses on the court. That's all going to depend on that.
It's some of those guys. It's their senior year on some of those guys.
Yeah.
Let's let Dayton. Let's let them play. Let them play.
I say, Coach, let them have 60.
Man.
Come on, let them have 60. Let's go.
Especially guys are going for Gatorade Player of the Year. We got to bring that into the count here.
That's true.
And it's probably a three-man
horse
race between Warlick, him, Montnati, and I would throw in maybe somebody like Carl Shawn or somebody might get in there, especially if they win 5A. Carl Shawn.
Here's what I would say, and this is the one thing I would say because I saw this on social media a while back, and I want to say this. Look, my thing is that to me, if you give this award, it's not just a senior award, okay?
Yeah.
But to me, when you look at the combination of years, and you've got a guy like a Dayton or a Dillon, and they're seniors, and they've put this together for years, Jalen is going to win this award.
The next 2 years, probably.
but it's not his year. He hasn't won a state title yet.
But I will say, I was just going to stop you there. What if Owasso wins the state championship?
Then I could see you justifying giving it to him.
Because that's what I'm saying. We might have to wait to see.
Correct. But I would say if that doesn't happen and it plays out like we've said, I think Dillon and Dayton are the reason for that. Now you put into what if Carlashon wins for Midwest City?
What if the other guys don't win?
Correct.
See, the problem is
plays into it.
Dale is winning 2A, so that means then you're going with Dayton.
I'm going with Dayton, and
you're
going to
go with Dayton.
Or if Dillon wins, I think you could split it 50. You could go either way with those guys.
It
if
rarely
they both win.
goes to a sophomore, anyways.
Yes.
It does sometimes,
yes.
But it's typically junior, senior.
And that's only the reason why I'm saying this. Is I'm not being disrespectful to Jalen. He's fantastic.
No, he's the highest rated recruit we have in the state.
Correct, and kudos to him. He's earned it. He's played outstanding basketball. But when I look at that award and I look at the entire picture of what they've done throughout their high school career, they've got 2 more years on them. They've got multiple championships on these other players, both Carlashon. If Carlashon gets in that debate, I certainly respect that because he's a fantastic player. He's a really good player. And then you've got Jalen Montanati, who may end up being one of the best recruits to ever come out of Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So respect to both of those guys. They're both high major guys. Kudos. But when I look at Gatorade Player of the Year, and when I look at the entire resume of what both these players have done, those are the 2 guys. If they win, if they do what we think they will do, those are the 2 guys you could pick.
Yeah.
In my opinion, you could go either way, and you're not wrong in either one of them.
No,
and that's what I say about that.
I think I'll reserve my pick until I see who wins the state championship, because that might change my pick.
100%.
It really will.
No, and I think you're right on that. I think it does, because you're basing it on this year.
Yeah.
And some people will say, who cares what they've done in their resume? It's about this year, which I agree. If they let's say Jalen wins, Dayton wins, and Carlashon wins, then I give it to Dayton because Dayton's got more championships. He's done, his resume is more overall. He's shown more consistency throughout. So it is what it is. You can argue other things.
And also the thing there is that they tend to do that with a senior. So meaning Carlashon and Jalen can come back next year and win that award.
Correct.
So that they probably will favor those seniors, especially if they win the championship.
Because they've won more than the other 2 guys.
But it's just
have.
like we said, with Owasso possibly winning the next 2 6A state championships, he's going to be heavy favorited to win the next 2 Gatorade Players of the Year.
Carlashon's going to have his work cut out for him. But I mean, look, he played for Newcastle. They didn't win a title at Newcastle, right? So it's you got to win in that situation. And if Carlashon had won already and he was in a position and likely to win another one, I mean, come on, you can't argue.
I
that,
think the race next year for Gatorade Player of the Year will be Carlashon and Jalen.
Yeah.
I think it's already.
So.
I mean, we're already jumping to next season, but I think those 2
and
guys,
rightfully so, because they're the front runners and should be.
So we've got Dale beating Hennessy. I've got Pecola beating Preston. We get the matchup that we've wanted to see from the beginning of the year. Our preseason pick was Pecola Dale.
Yep.
We had Pecola high before anybody had him high at the beginning of the year, before the season even started. I've got Dale beating Pecola.
I've got
too much depth.
Too much depth. I will say this though, Dale's going to have some consistency from the perimeter. Good defense in the block. Is the first thing, and they're also going to have to knock down shots because they're going to try to find a way to nullify Dayton. And Denton's going to have to step up and hit threes. Levi's going to have to step up and hit threes. Easton's going to have to step up and penetrate and kick or hit jump shots to help them be successful. You've got a number of players on Dayton's team or on Dale's team that are unbelievable players. Deacon Jones, another one.
Easton
there's
Edmondson,
just so many.
Levi Kelly.
There's so many. They can all do it. But they're going to have to step up because if they're going to rely, they can't sit back and expect Dayton to do it. And they don't do that. And Coach has them well drilled. I just think that Pecola's going to give they're going to give everything they have, and they've got 2 horses on that team that can play basketball. They've got a lot more than 2.
I also think that Dale is still primed for the next couple seasons because not only are they going to have Denton stay there, and Denton is coming to his own, but they've got a freshman in Keldon Neely that a lot of people don't know about. and they will, because he's
what?
about 6'4", 6'5", athletic. He can play.
And let's throw another little wrench into it. OSSAA rules, and people can transfer. So guess what? Do you think Dale is not going to get a transfer? And I know Coach Edmondson's not going to try to recruit anybody. I'm just saying, who doesn't want to go play for Dale?
Yeah.
If you want to win a state championship,
that would probably just be the drive that the kid, unless they're gonna, because that would be unless they move into Dale. Yeah. If you have to it's kind of out of it's about an hour out of the metro.
It's
that's a big caveat in that.
It's between Shawnee and Oklahoma City, so it's probably about 30 minutes outside of Midwest City area. You know, fringes of Oklahoma City. But the point is that kids want to play for winners, and Dale is a winning program with a fantastic coach, a great culture. Those players know how to play basketball. Yeah. They're smart. I can't wait to have Easton on our squad this summer. Yeah. The dude can get paint touches almost at will.
You got to look at them next year. They're going to have Easton back. They're going to have Levi. They're going to have Denton. They're going to have Traden Chambers. They're going to have Keldon Mealy. Yeah. I mean, they're going to be really good again next year.
Look for Chambers to have a big game in that championship game.
And
he's a kid that gets overlooked a lot, but I think you watch him, he's very consistent. And the other thing too is if Dayton gets rid of the basketball, Deacon Jones he's a 1,000-point scorer. I mean, you got some horses on this team.
And I also want to say on the other side, I think that a lot of people, Dale for a 2A gets a ton of attention and a ton of media
and
coverage.
Rightfully so.
I think that the state, especially in the state championship game, is going to get their first look at Coda Terrell and see that he is a for real high level Division I player, and 6'9", athletic, moves like a guard, and then on top of that, Garrett Scott, who's had a hell of a career.
Yeah, Garrett played for us last summer, and he can do a lot of things extremely well. He's a really good basketball player, got good length, can knock down jump shots. He's a really, really good player. And a two-sport stud. He can play football. He's at a high level and has got offers there and can play basketball. So he's a special player. He'll present problems for them too, and even some matchup issues for Dale to have to answer to. So it's going to be a fantastic game. That's another game that I think if everything plays out the way that we have it laid out, I think it's going to be extremely fun to watch and highly recommend people.
And do we need to hop into our sponsor?
Yeah, absolutely. So with that being said, Logan Elite, Nate Logan of Logan Elite Basketball, training out of Destiny Christian High School in Del City, Oklahoma. Nate provides affordable group and individual training options every week. Logan Elite Training aims to help players develop their skill sets, basketball IQ, confidence, and ultimately help them become more prepared for their current teams as well as the next level. Logan Elite currently trains some of the best high school and junior high players, including one we just discussed, a couple more on top of that, being the Forsyth brothers. Visit LoganEliteBasketball.com or message him on Instagram at Logan Elite for more information on how to get signed up. I will say this, Logan does a fantastic job. My son's going to go see Logan in the off season this year. Mm-hmm. He's going to spend some time. He'll be working out probably with Dayton and some other guys. So I'm looking forward to that. But Nate's top tier. There's a lot of guys out there that are top tier, and Nate's not the only one. Get with us on the podcast. We'd love to have promote you guys on the podcast. But all in all, Nate does a fantastic job. Check out Nate Logan at Nate Logan Elite or LoganEliteBasketball.com and get set up for some training this spring and summer.
And me and Coach Barber will be out at a bunch of games starting tomorrow. So if you see us out and about, come say hello. Come tell us what you love about the podcast, what you hate about it, what picks you think are trash, which ones are good. We want to hear it all. We love when you guys come up and talk to us, engage with us. I just know from being down in Shawnee, I talked with Bethany's head coach, Brent Cannon, and just the feedback I'm getting from these coaches, it's been excellent. Coach Jake Brown from McGinnis reached out to me about the positivity that people are getting from this podcast. It's really working. It's doing exactly what we intended for it to do, and that's give these kids a whole nother level of exposure for them. And remember, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube, follow us on Instagram, X, Twitter, whatever. Follow us on our socials, comment, like. give us feedback, rate us, whatever you want to do. We need all that support, and we love the support we're getting from you guys.
I'll say this too, and we had the spaces last week that we did. Huge response to that. I will say that we are going to have some cool shows coming up right after the state tournament as well.
Yeah.
So look out for what we're going to do there. We got some cool things coming, and so I'm excited about that and what we're going to do there to again promote these players and in these teams and these coaches. So
I was just going to say, I think that, and we've talked about it a little bit on social media, that Spaces really was something different that Oklahoma basketball has ever seen.
Yep.
Having that many coaches on at one time and crosstalk, going over stuff. It was kind of, like I said, a very special moment for Oklahoma basketball. And I've had coaches from down in the DFW message me and be like, that thing was great. We listened to that. It was kind of a game changer. We're definitely going to have more of them.
Yep.
We appreciate everybody that tuned into that. We will be getting going tomorrow at 4:30, State Fairgrounds 3A playoffs.
Yep.
So
excited.
Lucky. Yep. Great. Thank you, Oklahoma.
All right,
appreciate it.